Did you think you would be here today, this morning? Were you optimistic about the ruling?
Well, I knew I'd be here.
Yes, not geographically, I meant
sorry.
legally.
Yeah. Oh, no. Look, I mean, don't want to give away too much, but I had a conversation last night with the mighty Joanna Cherry, who must be hugely congratulated for what she's done. Obviously, Tina Miller as well, a remarkably brave woman. But I mean, in that conversation was Dominic, an earlier conversation, and we never thought that the court would go so far as to quash the prorogation. It was quite extraordinary. I think we were confident that they'd find in our favour that Johnson had prorogued Parliament to shut us all up. But we didn't think they would go so far as to say it was unlawful and therefore they would quash it. It is extraordinary. And it's the right decision because they're standing up for parliamentary democracy, a sovereign parliament. And, apparently that referendum was all about taking back control. And that's what's happening.
Yes.
And laws.
And you mentioned
the
the
great
law.
charlatan's got to now, he's got to get back to this parliament. There's talk that we will be gathering, I think it's tomorrow, at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Boris Johnson needs to be back here. He's got to start to grow up, man up, and behave in a grown-up, sensible fashion and not treat this as some Bullingdon Club bazaar debate with a strand of the Oxford Union. And he's got to behave like a Prime Minister and not like he's dangling on the end of a zip wire.
Yes, it's time for you to get off the fence, I think.
I know, but it is heartbreaking, actually.
Well, hang on, I just want to move on to that, if I may.
It's a great country. This is our great country.
No, I hear you.
God knows what the world thinks. Well, I think we know what the world thinks.
But people may not realise just how well qualified you are to comment on this, because you, of course, not just a politician, you have been a journalist and a lawyer as well, and this is a collision.
Yeah,
I just want to ask you a very specific question about...
Yeah, but I was a criminal lawyer.
No, I know. You're familiar with the law more so than the average punter.
Yeah, and I think the process and the fact that it was a unanimous decision. This is I'm astonished at that. No dissent at all. Quite incredible.
So here's a slightly odd question that I would really appreciate your answer to. It is... You describe Boris Johnson's history and record and urge him to change, but he is obviously a beneficiary of the tribalism that Brexit has introduced, and almost everybody who has been involved in these legal actions is, for want of a better word, a Remainer. The reason I mention your past as a lawyer, a journalist and now a politician is because I'm really interested in whether you think it's possible to persuade some people, you will never persuade all of them, but to persuade some people on the other side of the Brexit argument that this legal case has been pursued for reasons that are more important than Brexit itself, or indeed stopping Brexit.
Oh yeah, there are some. I mean, there are. You'll find that there will be people who have looked at this, who voted Leave. There are, of course I know this. I've got friends. I've got obviously a large number of constituents, perfectly good, sensible people who voted Leave for good, reasonable reasons. I don't agree with them. And they have looked at two things that have happened with absolute horror. A number of things. First of all, the dismissal of British business. Secondly, the sacking of 21 thoroughly decent, loyal Conservatives like Ken Clarke and Philip Hammond. And then thirdly, the blatant suspension of Parliament for no other reason than to shut down the debate, stop us from doing our job, and so that we could crash out the one thing I believe passionately the British people did not vote for overwhelmingly, and they were certainly told that we wouldn't be doing.
So it's all back on.
God knows, I don't know what's going to happen, but we can't go on like this. And your listeners, however they voted, the sensible, good Leavers, good Remain people, look at what's happening in our country and say, we've had enough of this. We can't go on like this. And I know that not everybody finds favour with the second referendum, but it's the only way through it. With this, we are in a mess. We are in this impasse. Let's just get it back to the British people, and then let's get on and do other things that we have to do with our great country.
Who are you going to trust? The people who have lied to you or made terrible mistakes? Because it's not fair to portray them all as dishonest. Or the people who've turned out, much to their own horror, to be right? That's the question. You have people who didn't understand what the single market was, who didn't understand what the customs union was, who didn't understand what the four freedoms were, who didn't understand the importance and the relevance of the British border in Ireland, who didn't understand just-in-time supply chains, who didn't understand why the Japanese car companies were warning that they would have to leave in the event of no deal or in the event of continuing uncertainty, the people who poo-poo what the National Farmers Union have to say, the people who poo-poo what the CBI have to say, the people who poo-poo what the Bank of England has to say, the people who poo-poo what the Office of Budget Responsibility has to say, the people who poo-poo the Treasury's own forecasts on what will happen in the event of the various different Brexits. So you've got all of those people there who've been wrong about everything are claiming that they understand what WTO terms means, and that all the people who've been right about everything don't have a Scooby-Doo what WTO terms means. And that really is where I am this morning, in a state of, I don't know what you'd call. I don't know quite what you'd call it. No, it's an almost Zen-like befuddlement. It's a kind of almost rising above the mess and looking down and trying to unravel it. Because I honestly think that a significant swathe of the population will continue to trust the people who have been shown to be wrong, rather than now finally turn to the people who've been shown to be right.